What could go wrong?
That's right.
Ask yourself that, y'all. What could go wrong if I just can be myself? The answer is everything.
Welcome to the podcast where we try to inspire better work performance. Thanks for listening.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindy Baldi, and Geoffrey Tumlin is back in the seat.
Yellow, back and better than ever.
Today, we are going to talk about...
By talk, we mean spank.
We're going to talk about reasons why bringing your authentic self to work may not be the best idea in the world.
That's right.
We have a book.
We do have a book, Uncertainty Playbook.
There we go. There's our book.
Yep.
14 strategies for work success in a chaotic world.
Yeah.
I'd say it's timely, but there's always chaos.
There's always chaos.
There's always uncertainty.
Yeah. The basic gist is in uncertainty, people don't take enough risks. They play with scared money. And that results in a life that's nowhere near as big and fulfilling as it could be. And this is how to unwind that.
So, available on Amazon.
Yeah, everywhere. Egghead Press, Amazon. Buy the book, yo.
Buy the book. Leave a review. That's also very helpful on Amazon.
Where to begin?
First, let's start with a definition, right? So authentic, like this idea of authentic leadership is that...
It's a term in the literature.
Research.
It hasn't quite broken through to the top journals.
It hasn't broken through the top journals, and the research that's been there, it's been very difficult to define.
Yeah.
All the literature has been super murky.
Yeah.
It's almost like the researchers believe it must be true, and so they keep pursuing it. And we see this every once in a while.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with it. The definition of it is bringing your true self to work. So right there, let me just stop you. What is your true self? Because like all of us have like many, many, many multiple selves. We have the self we bring to grandma. We have the self we bring to work. There's all sorts of that going on. We can talk more about that. So that's the definition. And it has all these problems in the academic research. The reason why people want to believe it is because the hope is that it would increase performance, reduce turnover, and get people to be more committed. Because we do know that when somebody feels accepted at work, that that sense of belonging is very sticky.
Yeah, and it's a little easier if you don't have to hide important facets of yourself.
And there are certain personalities for which hiding certain facets about yourself are more difficult than others. It's called self-monitoring.
Snyder, I think. Mark Snyder.
And you're looking at a low self-monitor and a high self-monitor.
Yellow.
He's so high that he knew.
I lied on the scale.
He lied on the last couple of them because he didn't want to get a perfect score.
I didn't want to be the only 25 out of 25 on the scale. So I lied on two of the questions.
That's the problem with knowing where the scale is taking you. Right. You wind up deciding that you can't even admit to yourself you are an extreme self-monitor. He's like the chameleon. The point is that for low self-monitors such as myself, it feels very inauthentic to not just be who you think you need to be in the moment, behave in the way that internally you think is right. So you can see how low self-monitors and the idea of authentic leadership would just like line up perfectly. But
it's like giving permission for people to not have to compensate for their instinctual behavior.
Yeah. And so I'll give you an example.
Go ahead.
So when I was going around for academic jobs, I went to a particular university that has a Catholic bend to it. And, I'm fairly naughty. I grew up around bikers. So
we know.
I like to swear.
We know.
Sometimes just for fun.
We know.
You're not much better than me.
Me?
So anyway, I went into this thing and like every word that was coming out of my mouth, I was super monitoring because I'm in this environment that is, I should have known better. Not going to be a super great fit for me. And I remember walking out of that day and just being exhausted and driving away from that university and saying, I don't care if they give me a job or not. I cannot work there. This is just too incredibly exhausting. Now, flip to the other side. I went to a job interview in Louisiana.
Known for naughtiness.
That's why I like to go to Louisiana.
By the way, their motto of live and let live is similar to what we're talking about here a little bit.
That's true. See, like laissez-faire.
Yep.
And felt completely comfortable with that whole group. Still love them, actually. And knew that was the good fit for me. So, the point is that self-monitoring is super exhaustive. And that's one of the reasons why
people glom onto this idea
of authenticity.
I could just be myself. What could go wrong?
That's right.
Ask yourself that, y'all. What could go wrong if I just can be myself? The answer is everything. And so we're doing our job by tackling this topic, authentic leadership, because you're probably never going to look up the science on this. The science on this is conflicting.
Yeah, it's conflated.
So it's murky. But if you punch up authentic leadership or is authentic leadership scientific, it's going to come up yes. But this is the yes, but conversation. Google's going to say it's scientific, but it's not established science. There's still a lot of back and forth on it. And in our look at it, we don't think that it's useful. In fact, we're having this conversation because for the 99.9999% of the world that never reads scientific journals, all you hear is the name authentic leadership. And you think, oh, well, this science shows that I can just be myself and there's good outcomes. And the purpose of this podcast is to say, that's not true. You cannot have as your governing theory for being a manager that I just need to be myself, because there will be a multitude of environments where you being yourself is going to cause you to not fit right, meaning not fit the moment, not meet the moment, and to choose the wrong behavior. You're going to pick something instinctual and not something learned that you should
occasionally
deploy.
You get lucky. Occasionally you wind up being
in
just
Louisiana.
And it's just what you needed. It's good. It's really just an amazing fit.
Right. Yeah.
But that's luck. And the next group that you wind up with, even at the same place as you continue in your career, it's very unlikely that you're going to get that same setup.
And your story is an important one, as you just said. It's that first college that was very Catholic. That's not a good fit. And fit does matter. And fit takes labor. When it doesn't fit, it takes all this monitoring and all this adaptive behavior that requires you going against the grain. And we're not saying that that isn't important, just that if you go to the extreme and think, well, I don't ever have to monitor or adapt my behavior. Basically, I can just be myself. I can be authentic. Then you're going to run into a variety of situations and occurrences where you're going to underperform because you're letting go of all of the restraint that functional adults and good managers use all the time. Right. Where I choose not to say something.
I mean, one of the things that makes you a good leader or manager, however you want to look at it, managers are a type of leader.
Same thing. We don't distinguish.
You have to have emotional regulation.
Yeah.
Because
I think so.
What you do stands out more to the people you're leading because they're following your cues. And so you can't just show up and be yourself.
Yeah.
While at the same time, as you rise in an organization, you basically become less and less constrained by resources. You have more and more control over resources. And this is Pfeffer's work on power, a small piece of it. It's a very good book, by the way.
Yeah, like the seven something of power.
Types of power.
Something like that. Secrets of Power. We'll put it in the notes.
Yeah, very good book.
Geoffrey Pfeffer out of Stanford.
Yeah. So anyway, some of his research says that, it's not that power so much corrupts. It's that power exposes.
Or reveals.
Yeah. Because basically, as you rise and you get more and more control over the resources, there's less motivation for you to self-monitor because you can basically do what you want to some degree. Again, like this is a scale, but you can get away with a lot more without having to sort of do the influence tactics of people who are on the lower rungs. At the same time, that really to be a good leader, you need to be actually paying attention to your people. So it's this paradox that's happening.
Yes, that just at the very time you would benefit more from regulating and moderating your behavior.
Because people have more visibility on you.
Paying more attention.
Yeah.
You're instead, not only are you buying yourself a new Beamer with your new position and new power, but you're...
While laying other people off. Sometimes.
You're basically not restraining yourself as much as you did to earn those positions. And that is the riddle on top of the conundrum, is that the riddle is, as Pfeffer says, the more power you get, the less you use this very restraining type behaviors that help you accumulate that power. And the more you become exposed as your jerk behaviors come out, whatever's
truly
underlying.
You.
This idea of you can have all these good outcomes if you only be yourself.
Which automatically assumes that yourself is a gem.
Right. Yeah.
Some people, some people are delightful.
Yeah. Many people are.
Many people. Yes. Yeah. Most people are a mixed bag.
Yeah. And they've been covering up the bad.
Yeah. And some people are absolute jerks.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that word instead of the one that I really wanted to use.
Yeah. More of that comes out. And so that's the riddle. I know the authentic leadership people would say when we're talking about, acting with integrity and being true to yourself.
Yeah. But if being true to yourself doesn't have anything to do with integrity.
Yeah. Right. And that assumes that what you're calling integrity isn't just a value conflict. Mm-hmm. And so now you're jamming your belief down the throat of the people you work with because you think it's authentic. And maybe this is another way of saying our root problem with the authentic leadership idea, or just being yourself, is that you're not able to do that as a manager. The best managers are constantly scanning the environment and trying to meet the moment, meet their people, meet the situation. And that requires adaptive behaviors. And authentic leadership, taken to the extreme, lets people take that as a permission slip to not moderate or adapt their behaviors. And, you and I talk about this a lot. Like, the difference between a functional adult and a non-functional adult is the functional adult modifies and adapts their behaviors. The non-functional adult is driven by impulses. And the main outcomes that you see is the non-functional adult has great trouble holding jobs and holding relationships because they're not restraining themselves. They're not adapting to the moment. They're not choosing to go against the grain and pick up a learned behavior that would work better. And just in the simplest example, I'm very extroverted. And so I've picked up over time a learned behavior to not talk as much. And I have to constantly remind myself to deploy that, because it would be a lot easier for us to press start on this podcast and for me to just start talking for the whole time. Mm-hmm. That takes no effort. That would be authentic. But you know what? Be a terrible podcast. You would not like it and nobody would want to listen to it. And so that is just one of an infinite array of examples of why being authentic doesn't work.
Well, and I think, yes, I agree with that example, but I think also, being around people, like, there's going to be friction.
Yeah.
And when you experience it and you're being your authentic self, you're reacting to that friction and quite possibly making it worse.
Yeah.
Versus feeling the friction, regulating yourself, and, maybe it was just an accident, or maybe it was, just a bad day. And if you're not reacting to it, you're not driving home that they did this thing. You're not jamming it down their throat. But if you are just, hey, I'm in the moment and I'm reacting to whatever I feel, I'm in my true self mode, then you're going to wind up making things that never actually had to be an issue.
Yeah. I mean, we counsel people all the time that if in a coaching session, they say something like, well, this is just who I am. I mean, that's usually a cop-out. So what? That's who you are. Go back to the thing that made our species, Homo sapiens, successful is that we were able to group together. And to do that, we needed a couple things. One was we needed to be highly socially aware and alert. What's going on? How are you feeling? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And then we had to modify our behavior. And so we couldn't go around hitting people over the head all the time with the club. And it's funny that we've arrived at a point now that we're so smart that we're basically going back and saying,
hey, let's hit people over the head.
Right. Like, how is this even a theory? For years, I worked with Howard Prince at the Center for Ethical Leadership at the University of Texas. And he was great at developing people, leader development, which just means taking somebody at time one, and then a year later, you're making them better and you're increasing their capacity to lead other people, which is what we aspire to do with this podcast, help you be a better manager, management development. But in that literature of leadership studies, there's all these narrow theories, but it's not in the best journals, and there's a lot of conflict on it. And it hits on an idea that a lot of people had been fighting for a long time, is this idea that there's just one thing or one small set of qualities to be a good manager or leader. And that's just not true. And we see people, big, small, all races, all ethnicities, all different kinds of personalities. Yeah. And you can be a good leader with almost any set of personality traits, so long as you're adapting them so that if one of your traits is extroverted, you know when to shut up. And if one is introverted, on the other hand,
you know that you have to speak at times.
And I don't know how many I could list, but I'm going to give it a try. Here's all the narrow leadership theories that encourage people to let go of the 50 things you have to do to be a good manager and only focus on a couple. Authentic leadership. Just be yourself. And if it feels authentic to you, do it. Servant leadership. Have a servant's heart. And if you try to serve others, there will always be good outcomes. Charismatic leadership. Have that energy, have that kind of special inspiration, and you'll be a good leader. Transformational leadership, which is like the grandfather of charismatic leadership. Be inspirational, motivate other people, all the way back to, in the very beginning, 100 years ago, great man theory. The tall people would be the great leaders. It was always the tall men, basically.
Born with certain traits.
Right, and this, I know if you're listening to this and you're under the age of 30, this may all be a surprise, but my dad, may he rest in peace, he died 6 months ago. When my dad was in college at the military academy, they sorted people into companies by height. Still following the idea that we think the higher people are more likely to be the leaders. And that was 60s. Insane. Like, not 1760s. This was 1960. And this wasn't, East Junior Community College. This was West Point, the military academy. And so this will be the last thing I say. Then I have to restrain myself from the whipping boy that I never get tired of whipping on. Great managers have to be able to do 100 things well. That's why there's
That's why it's hard.
Infinite amount of topics in this podcast. If all you had to do was be yourself and be inspirational, we could cover that in probably a couple hours and we'd be good to go. But there's not. There's times when you have to let other people be the inspiration and you be more of a follower. There's times when you have to not talk and let other people talk. There's times when you have to be very stern. And there's other times when you have to be as loving as Oprah Winfrey. And you got to be able to do all those things.
Because not only are you dealing with different people, but they're different from moment to moment.
That's right. And we're gonna do this podcast long enough to where there'll be another theory. One day in a couple of years, there'll be something else and it'll be hot.
Some of them catch on not because they're accurate, but because they're appealing. And this is an appealing theory because you don't have to actually do anything to meet it. But it fails on the research side, but it also fails just on the fact that you are making a gigantic assumption that everybody's authentic self is going to have integrity,
right,
be positive,
right,
want to develop other people. Right. That's not everybody's authentic self.
Yeah. And almost everybody conflates authenticity with their values. And people can differ. Good people can differ on the things that they value. And that will cause you to fight and argue. Because, I'm being authentic to this is my value in this situation. I value that right now we do what's best for the company, short term. Well, somebody else may value the long term. This will be worse for the company now, but it'll be a better investment later. And you think, I'm being authentic. We need to do this for the company right now. And this other person, I'm being authentic. We need to invest for the future. And so then you're now actually fighting.
Well, and I think that's what we have to get into next. So these are all the problems with the theory straight out of the gate. But we're not saying be fake. We're saying that leadership means that you have to be able to emotionally regulate yourself, pay attention to your people, figure out, obviously you need to know what the goals are for your department, your organization, and what you're doing. But you also have to figure out sort of in the moment where they need the support.
Yep.
And then help lead them in the direction that you want to lead them. You're not forgoing leadership by paying attention to your people. You still are taking the wheel. It's just that you're taking the wheel while considering them and their needs. And the authentic piece, you don't have to go to work and just be impulsive about who you are to be authentic. You are many, many people. You're the person who shows up to church. You're the person who shows up to grandma's. You're the person who...
Right, meaning you act one way at church, you act one way at grandma's. You go to Las Vegas, you act another way.
Right. You go to New Orleans, you act another way. So you're all these people. And so when you go to work, be the professional person. Be the person who's coming in, solving problems, moving things ahead, helping other people grow, and basically creating a work environment where people are safe to bring their best efforts to the work.
Yeah, and not all that's going to feel authentic.
No, sometimes you're going to suck it down because this person actually knows what they're doing and, maybe they're having a bad time.
Yeah. Yeah, some days what will feel authentic is to go into the office and shut your door and not talk to anybody. And you're going to have to do the opposite to be a good manager. Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to have a negative conversation with somebody and after you're both going to want to duck each other. And as a manager, you can't do that because that person will hide forever and you got to get out there and you got to do the thing that you don't want to do. And when you're in trouble with your boss and you don't want to go to all these functions, you need to get out there and you need to go because it's the only way that you wind up staying engaged and basically recover.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be very careful. Authenticity is often an excuse for bad behavior or an excuse for too heavily emotionally driven behavior. When we want to be informed by our emotions all the time. How do I feel? Am I angry? Am I happy? but not have those emotions choose our behavior.
Right. I was just listening to a book that isn't typical for me to listen to, but it had so many recommendations. I picked it up.
Was it called The Vegan Cookbook? Let me guess. A book that you wouldn't normally listen to. How about Why All the Reasons I Love Snow Skiing?
That's true. I definitely would not.
Snow skiing is an amazing sport.
No, I'm not picking up that book. No, it's called The Untethered Soul. And
why wouldn't you, I think our listeners want to know, why wouldn't you normally read a book like that?
I would be concerned that normally it's going to be too simplistic, put a message out into the universe, and that is how you create
like
your
The
life.
Secret.
Yes. Anyway, this book was interesting because I'm only in the very beginning of it, but like the idea is, like, you have this person in your head, this voice that's always in your head, and you think about it as you, but in order for you to observe the voice, you can't be the voice. Like, you're the awareness.
Right. I understand.
And so, like, you made me think of it because you're like, hey, we have all these emotions, and yes, they confer information. But one of the points in that book is, look, that voice, pay attention. It's wrong a lot. So when you're having that instinctual moment where, like, you're feeling that emotion and that voice is telling you you're getting jacked with, right? Like, step back and be like, really?
Right.
Maybe I need to see this from a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to peel the onion too far back because people will wonder what's actually true. But the science is pretty clear that not only is the voice in our heads often wrong, but we don't even know what we feel. And so we're putting names. We're saying, how do I feel right now? Well, I feel upset. Well, am I? Or am I just hungry? Well, I'm sad. Well, am I? Or have I just not been outside yet today? I mean, like,
right.
As foundational as we think emotions are.
And the senses. Senses lie to us all the time.
Yeah. We think we're running on good data. That's all. And so if we don't actually know how we feel a lot of the time, and we'll put a name on it anyway, if the voice in our head is often wrong.
At least putting a name on it is a start. It starts to help unwind it.
Yes. But usually people, as soon as they put a name on it, they assume it to be true and they move on. And so it becomes a data point. And so how do I feel right now? Well, I'm mad. Data point, mad. And then I move on from being mad. And the next set of my thoughts or actions are informed by being mad. When actually, if I stopped and reflected, I'm not mad, I'm hungry. And if I put that label on it, it might lead to a different set of actions and outcomes.
Sure.
And we're not looking for perfection in anyone. Just to come back to this idea of
authenticity.
What's wrong with being authentic? What's wrong is, how are you going to figure out what's authentic if you don't even know how you feel a lot of the times? And the voice telling you to be authentic is often wrong. And so, not to get all qualitative metaphysical.
Oh, see, and that was the reason why this isn't my typical book. No, I mean, it's actually, I thought that was very constructive. Like, in order for there to be awareness of the voice means that the voice is actually not you. Like, you are the awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're the observer.
The fatal flaw in authentic leadership is it assumes that there's an authentic you and not a you that's constantly changing.
Yeah.
And trying to meet the variety of moments that you find yourself in. That's it.
I think what we'd like is for managers to think more deeply about what it means to be, like, is this even useful to be authentic? When is it useful to be authentic? We're not trying to say be fake.
Yeah. And we're not trying to say take a job that you don't believe in. If you're strongly influenced by your faith, just as an example, then you probably don't want to work at, a bar on Bourbon Street selling hand grenades. I had a dream about hand grenades. We were in New Orleans not too long ago. A hand grenade is
Commander's Palace. Shout
drink.
out.
Yeah. Yes, Commander's Palace.
We love that place.
The best restaurant in the world for decades. But a hand grenade is a very powerful drink on Bourbon Street. I didn't have any. I had them when I was 20, not when I'm 50. And if you don't feel like drinking is moral, and that's value, that would be a value judgment, then you're probably going to have a hard time working in a bar on Bourbon Street. Just as a...
I think also there's some usefulness in thinking about New Orleans and Bourbon Street and Halloween and Motorcycle Week, where it's, people will...
Burning Man.
Yeah, we're like these moments where people go and maybe they're not who they are in their daily life.
Yeah.
But there is a piece of who they are in whatever that they're trying on.
Yeah, we had
and there's a bit of experimentation.
Sure. Yeah, we had the guy that we work with runs a hospital, really, really good guy. And he just did a vow renewal for, I forget how many years. And he took a bunch of people and they went to Vegas and they dressed up like the 80s for when they got married. And so
that's fun.
He had on Vans and a mullet wig. And he said, just what you're saying, he said, as soon as I put on that mullet wig, I completely became a different person. Mm-hmm. And there's no harm in that. In fact, it reflects the fact that we have, a lot of, as I think Thoreau said, we contain multitudes. There's a lot in us.
Well, and that's what I've been saying is there are a lot of different identities baked into the cake.
Yeah.
And so just because you're not being this one particular one and you're recognizing some of the constraints in the environment, it doesn't mean that there's not still truth in who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem isn't that you put on a mullet wig and you act different and it feels, he loved it. It feels great. I became a different person. The problem would be if you put on that mullet wig and you decide this is the way I should feel.
Forever, in every situation.
That's just, to use an example, you can see it in a bunch of people, but that's Andrew Dice Clay, the comedian from a long time ago, he became one thing. And that's not who he is. That's an act. Or Borat by Sacha Baron Cohen. And he was Ali G before. And he's been a couple different things. But Andrew Dice Clay was only one thing. And he could never be something else because he was only that one thing. And so it's a parable of he could never be anything else. And then when that one thing has a very limited shelf life, and then that one thing happened to be highly misogynistic, and that increasingly ran into, basically his audience kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And that's a parable for being one thing, which we're using some different words for today. We've said being authentic.
The idea of true self. So if you think your true self is...
I'm going to say it like it is, or I'm going to lean back and let others take the lead. It could be anything. Could be what my true self is. I just say what I think and I mean what I say. And in the words of Dr. Phil, how's that working out for you? Or, well, my true self is I don't want to be out front. I want to be behind the scenes. And, what else could you have been if you came out from behind the curtain occasionally?
Well, and I think that brings up a point that we haven't touched on is, how much of this idea of true self is actually also a limitation. So if we are thinking about ourselves in terms of this one true self, then that's going to put constraints on the possibilities for the future.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And what are you sacrificing for that?
Yeah. Tell your Claire story.
Oh, well, Claire was my roommate. Hello, Claire all. And we had an open closet policy. So,
yeah, sure.
We wanted to borrow each other's clothes. We didn't ask for permission. If it was hanging, it was available. And so there was one day where I went to go get my biker leather jacket and go to school, and it was gone. And I just assumed Claire had it, and I didn't really put too much on it. And so anyway, I'm watching some TV, and she comes in later on in the day after her classes, and she takes my jacket. And Claire is more stylish. She cares more about style. She definitely encouraged me to up my game in terms of fashion.
Yeah, sure.
Which I know is surprising because I'm really utilitarian. But but she comes in and she has my leather jacket on, which she hasn't exactly liked this whole time. But she goes over and she throws it down and she goes, "That is a power jacket. And now I understand." And it's true. You put on that leather biker jacket and, there are things about that group that, they're easy to love. Really, they take a lot of responsibility for themselves.
Are you talking about bikers?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. They take a lot of responsibility for themselves. They expect respect, but
we're not
generally giving it.
Nerds, we're not talking about e-bikes here.
No, we're not. We're talking about motorcyclists. But in that, there's a lot of power in sort of how they operate. And that jacket becomes a symbol of that. And you put it on and you do feel powerful.
Yeah.
Now, they're like every other group because it's a huge group of people. They got all sorts of different people there. Some of them not so great, some of them wonderful. But the thing that unifies is this idea of respect. Give respect. If you don't get it, you're going to have a reaction. You're going to claim respect if it's not given.
Sure.
And in that, there's this sense of individualism, freedom, and power. And that all goes down into that jacket. And that's what Claire was experiencing. So it's it's, putting on something that connects to you in a way that is true. It just may not be the dominant
it's not
version
you all
of
the
you.
time.
Yeah.
We would say safely to be a good manager, you have to be able to do a lot of stuff. You have to be sometimes in the lead, sometimes from behind. Sometimes you're directive in your behaviors. Sometimes you're supportive in your behaviors. Sometimes you're giving people a benefit of the doubt. Other times you're heavily supervising. And that is part of the imperfectible and endless challenge of being a good manager.
And it's fun when you get something wonderful out of your people.
Yeah.
Or when you're able to help people be something that they didn't see they were.
Yeah. The tragedy of believing that you can be authentic is that by the time you've put a few years into life, you've learned a few things. And those things you've learned won't come to you as quickly as the way you were born with your instincts. So the first thing in a situation is what your instincts say you should do, what your traits suggest. And then after half a second, we can say, well, wait a minute. I know I usually leap first here, but over the years, I've learned to look and then leap. And if you glom onto a theory like authentic leadership, it suggests that I can go with my leap and not the look, because the leap is what feels right. I wish it was that simple, but it's not. And I think most people sense that, but it gets confusing when you can read articles and you hear this idea bubbling up and it sounds credible of how the best leaders are true to themselves. And I think we would say, without exaggeration, the best leaders absolutely do things all the time that they wish they didn't have to do. Ever see those pictures of the presidents before and after and how much they aged? Yeah. It's just because all day long getting fed terrible choices, having to pick, and then every time you step in front of a microphone,
having to justify it or having somebody attack you for it.
Yeah. And having to not say what you feel. Most well-developed people have learned by the time they're even young adults that I have to restrain myself a lot. I'll say one other thing as it relates to being authentic. A lot of times in our coaching, we'll spend a period of time talking through a tough challenge, and people will get frustrated and they'll say, well, this is what I want to do. Like, this is what feels right. And a lot of times it's instructive because it's the wrong thing to do. And it's instructive because they've been thinking, they've been getting increasingly frustrated with how complicated the situation is. And I just want to do this. And that would make me feel good and that would feel authentic. Why can't I do that? Well, because the consequences are going to be terrible. If you just fire this person, if you just quit, if you just tell that person, don't ever talk to me like that again. Well, that's your boss. How's that going to work? And so instead, we spend a lot of our time in coaching, gently reorienting people to just because you feel that way, or just because you're sick of the fact that the problems are complicated that you're facing, doesn't mean that you can stop thinking about them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's also a difference between the things that are within your internal realm of control versus the environment. Because what we see a lot in coaching is, a frustration with the situation not being what the person wants it to be. They're trying to basically force their will upon the situation. The situation isn't bending to it.
Yeah.
And in that, you may not be looking for your true self, but you may be looking for the truth of the situation, because you have an expectation in that moment that the external environment's telling you it's not very realistic.
Yep. I understand. And that sounds quasi-authentic. That's what we should encourage people to be. Quasi-authentic.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like that term.
Quasi-authentic.
Go forth and be quasi-authentic.
Go forth and be about, 60% of yourself.
All right. That's it. That's our hawking for the day. And
that's it.
Always likes, subscribe, all the things. Appreciated.
Appreciate y'all.
All right.
See you next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Management Muse. We are a podcast/YouTube channel that we hope is entertaining and educational. If you are on YouTube, we would appreciate you subscribing and maybe leaving a comment and a like. If you are on any of the podcasts listening to this, we would appreciate stars, following, comments, all the good stuff. We want to say thank you to Sarah and Rebecca. And then just as a last minute reminder, we also want to mention that we are management and communication professionals working in the field, but also have degrees that back us in science. All that being said, we are talking in generalities on this podcast. We do not actually know your particular situation. So proceed with common sense and maybe a little bit of experimentation on your end. And we hope that you make the world a more beautiful place by making work a more enjoyable place. Speaking of that, welcome, Poop Train Conductor.
Who is that?
This is somebody who recently subscribed and has such a wonderful name that I had to make a special hello. And I looked it up because I was like,
is that a real person?
Yeah.
Hello, Poop Train Conductor.
I had to look it up because I was like, there's got to be a video game meaning here. And sure enough,
there is.
There is.
All right.
See you next time on Management Muse.